Hi guys, welcome back. A few weeks ago I announced that I'm pregnant and I asked if you guys have any questions. I'd be happy to do a Q&A part 2 on this topic. And so today that's exactly what I'm doing. I figured we'd just have a little bit of an informal chat. It's been quite a while since I did a Q&A and this one will be particularly on the topic of pregnancy. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, before I get into the questions, I'm currently 16 weeks pregnant. At the beginning of this week, my bump was just like still not popping, And I was just like, where are you, And today I feel like it's finally starting to pop a little bit, a tiny bit, still not noticeable in clothes. Let me show you really quickly what it looks like. But it's finally starting to look more than just I had a really big lunch or something, which I'm super excited for. I think it's so cute. I think baby bumps are so adorable. I just want to touch it all day. And I look forward to it getting a little bit bigger. Not super big. I think towards like the last month, then it's a little bit intimidatingly big. But I think maybe like months 5 to 7, that's like peak baby bump era. I feel totally fine. The few symptoms that I had in my first trimester, particularly food aversions, are finally gone. I mean, it's still kind of an adjustment coming back to my regular eating habits because I feel like I don't have as much of a passion for cooking because I had all those weeks where I would dread going into the kitchen and just not know what to have. And now I have all these horrible associations with foods that I used to love. So it's a little bit of a transition, but I'm finally getting back in the groove of eating a little bit healthier and enjoying food a little bit more. But other than that, yeah, I feel perfectly fine, like asymptomatic. Actually, no, I do have some nose congestion when I lie down, which is like randomly a symptom of pregnancy in the second trimester. So to get to your questions, may I ask, how did you decide that you wanted to be a mother? I've been struggling with the idea of motherhood for a long time. Yeah, that's a really big question that I'm not sure I'm going to have the complete answer to. I have always personally known that I wanted to be a mother from ever since the time when I was a little girl. I always liked to treat dolls like babies. This is kind of weird, but I always wanted to be a teenage mom. And I think it's because maybe I wanted to give to somebody else a type of maternal affection that at certain points in my life was missing. But I've always been super excited about the idea of being pregnant, the idea of being a mom. And now that it's finally happening, it's kind of surreal. But I will say that even though this is always something that I knew I wanted to do, once you actually get to the age where you're like, okay, like this is the age where I think I should realistically be having a kid based on my particular life goals, I think it's totally normal to get cold feet a little bit and to kind of like go back and forth on it. Like in the weeks and months leading up to when I got pregnant, it would be like one day I was like, that's it, I want to be pregnant now, right this second. And then the next day I'd be like, no, I need more time. I want to like do these different things. I want to travel. I want to experience these adventures. But once it actually happened, once I found out that the test was positive, all those doubts were just kind of irrelevant. It's kind of true what people say, that there's never like a good time to be a parent. Certainly there are really bad times to be a parent if you're, like really struggling financially, for instance, and you're barely able to put food on the table for yourself, then yeah, there are bad times to become a parent, but there's no ideal time to become a parent because you can always come up with reasons why you're not 100% ready. But if you come to a point where you're like, no, I want to have a kid, then when that happens, you might find that those cold feet and those doubts just kind of melt away and are not relevant anymore. At least that's how it was for me. I don't have a lot of insights on how to help guide people who are maybe on the fence about parenthood, because again, that hasn't really been my experience. And I think it's so different from person to person. There's no one right answer. You really have to come up with the answer that you feel best with. It's something so intensely personal that even if there were somebody that was on the fence and said, this is what helped me work through it, that's not necessarily what might help you work through it. So, I'm sorry I can't be more helpful, but best of luck to you with your decision. I knew about my daughter too. I dreamed her and I felt different. I took the test at 4 weeks and it was positive. I knew the baby was a girl as well. Yeah, it's so interesting. So I mentioned that my husband had a dream that I was pregnant before we found out. And then I also had a dream about the baby, maybe like a month and a half ago. And in the dream, it was a boy. And it's interesting, when I first got pregnant, at first I didn't have a feeling of like whether it was a boy or girl. And then after a few weeks passed, I was like, I think it's a boy. And it's interesting because I just read that it's around 9 weeks that the baby actually differentiates into either male or female. So if I'm right, if I did actually sense that it's a boy, then it makes sense that I wouldn't have felt it in the first few weeks when it wasn't decided yet. I'm going to feel super silly sharing this if it turns out being a girl. But also, no matter what it is, I'm going to be so excited, because if it's a boy, I'm going to be super happy that I was right, that I could feel it. And if it's a girl, I'm going to be super happy because I'm definitely looking forward to like girly girl things and like helping my daughter grow up through girlhood. And I just find playing with girls and dressing them up and all that just so sweet. Why do you have to give up seafood if you're pregnant? So you actually don't have to give up seafood. You do have to give up seafood that's high in mercury, like bigger fish such as tuna. And it's recommended that you give up raw seafood because of possible, listeria, I think? I'm not sure. Some people do still eat raw fish. Like in Japan, I don't think it's recommended that you stay away from sushi because it's so ingrained in the culture. But then, of course, the quality of sushi in Japan can be different from like the quality of sushi that you get at a gas station in the US. I really wish I felt comfortable taking that risk because I really miss raw oysters and sushi. God, I miss them so much. But I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I did end up getting an infection that could have been prevented by just staying away from that. So literally, the minute that I deliver, my husband is going to get me a bunch of raw seafood. Please, please, please marry me. Well, I'm already married and expecting a child, which is what the video was about that you commented under. I was kind of wondering if people would stop making these kinds of comments once I announced I was pregnant. It's definitely going to be interesting to see the difference in how I'm perceived in like the maiden archetype versus the mother archetype, because in a lot of ways, the mother archetype is a little bit less sexualized, but also in a lot of ways, being pregnant is kind of like the most sexual thing you can do because like it's a strange spot to be in. Hope you will sprinkle in some parenting psych stuff on your channel. Yeah, definitely. I think it's inevitable because I get the sense that you learn so much about human development and human relationships and, of course, parenting too when you become a parent. Like, I learned so much about what it means to be human just from being around babies and children in my family, because you literally get to see, is this the right expression, how the pudding is made? Is that it? Like, you get to see how our adult versions came to be. You get to track that development across time, which is super fascinating. So it is inevitable that there will be videos that are inspired by my experience with parenting, and probably there will be a lot more on like parenting specifically as well. I don't want to shift gear into completely making content about that because it hasn't been my niche up until now. My niche has been just more broadly relationships, I think. And I don't want to alienate the sector of my audience that might not be interested in that. And I also don't want to make motherhood the only thing that I am, but I will definitely sprinkle in for sure. Question, isn't awareness of fragility of pregnancy a common knowledge and consciousness? I mean, I've noticed sometimes animals even seem to know. So this is in relation to what I had said in that video about noticing how people's true colors really come out when you get pregnant. Like for the vast majority of everyone in my life, they have been so loving and so sweet and so thoughtful and always checking in on me. And then there is just like a tiny, tiny section of people that seem weirdly callous about the pregnancy. And when I say weirdly callous, I mean like either they just straight up don't even acknowledge it, like not even saying congratulations, or like actively trying to stir shit in my life. And I was talking about how it's like a really fragile time, a really vulnerable time in a person's life to be pregnant. So it's really interesting to see how people treat you when you're at your most vulnerable. And yeah, I think the awareness of fragility is common knowledge for the most part. I don't think anyone assumes that like pregnant women are not experiencing symptoms or getting to do everything they want or not experiencing additional health concerns. And that's why it's so interesting to see who reacts with love and who reacts with, well, not love. One thing I will say though is I don't think you can really understand how much vulnerability is entailed in pregnancy unless you've either experienced it or someone very close to you has experienced it. Because, for instance, I'm like the first one in my friend group to be pregnant. I've had family members who were pregnant, but they were living on other continents, so I didn't really get to see it firsthand. And I don't work with like prepartum, peripartum, postpartum for work, and I don't work with reproductive issues, so I didn't realize just how many things could go wrong in pregnancy until actually becoming pregnant, and also just like the full spectrum of symptoms that can come up. Like I said, I've been very lucky with symptoms, but I recognize that's not the case for everybody. For the vast majority of women, there are a lot of really unpleasant symptoms that come up. And so I think if you don't have that direct experience, either through family or personal experience or work, to know that pregnancy is super vulnerable, then you kind of get a pass. Like, I feel a lot of guilt about not being more involved with like checking in with my family members when they were pregnant, because I didn't really know to, like I didn't think to, I didn't understand what was involved in pregnancy. But if you very much know what's involved in pregnancy and you are still not only not showing up for somebody who's close to you, but actually making life harder for them, that's not something that I can really forgive. It's becoming super clear to see people's true colors right now, and I will be taking that knowledge forward even when I'm not pregnant. I can't wait to hear how you decide to go about your personal individual needs and wants during motherhood, I guess starting right now. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm already thinking about like maybe once the baby is born, making a vlog showing how I attempt to balance, self-care with caring for an infant. Not showing the child. I will never show my children on camera, but showing like what my schedule looks like. Maybe some of you guys are going to laugh at me and say this is too ambitious, and you'll see, just wait. But I completely intend to continue maintaining my cooking schedule, my workout schedule, keeping some semblance of structure in my work life, and having a very equitable parenting strategy with my husband. I tend to be very disciplined, very good at time management, so I'm going to do my best. I'm most productive in the mornings. He's most productive in the afternoons. So we've talked about how in the mornings, he would look after the baby, and then in the afternoons, I would look after the baby, and then, of course, in the evening and at nighttime, we would kind of alternate. It, of course, makes it harder for the woman if she's the one feeding the child, but I intend to get creative as much as possible because we are very much equals in this relationship. So I think I will feel a lot more supported than new moms who don't have that kind of supportive partner, unfortunately. The one thing I'm a little worried about is I know I'm going to need to take a step back from being too productive, and I'm probably going to experience guilt over that because I want to be able to support my family. We're saving up to buy a house, hopefully in like a year. And so that's another really ambitious goal. And being self-employed, I don't get maternity leave, And because I'm not a citizen where I live, I also don't get all the benefits that self-employed individuals get here when they're pregnant. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for sure, but I'm going to try my best to balance my own needs with the baby's needs, because it doesn't help anyone if I'm not taking care of myself. It doesn't help my child if I'm also not taking care of myself. As someone with an ED who's trying to recover, I would appreciate hearing you talk about your experiences with both. It's so scary for me giving up something that has had a hold on me for so many years. And I feel like hearing you talk about your experience might help me become more level-headed about it like you yourself have become. But of course, it's an extremely personal thing, and I completely understand if you're uncomfortable with opening up in that regard. Yeah, so first of all, I'm very sorry to hear that you're going through that. I know what it's like, so I completely empathize with you. And I do have a video talking about my recovery journey on my psychology channel, so I'll link that up here if you haven't seen it already. In terms of like pregnancy and having an eating disorder history, like I said in the previous video on this topic, I'm very grateful that I was at a place where I was completely healed from my issue before I got pregnant, because I think it must be very difficult if you're not. In some ways, though, I also feel like pregnancy kind of pushes out like the last few little glimmers of those disordered behaviors and thoughts that you might have had left over. So for example, I don't have fear foods anymore, but I always had foods that like I would still avoid because I had such negative connotations with them. I remembered feeling so much guilt in the past that I just didn't want to deal with those memories. So things like potato chips, butter, ice cream, desserts. And being pregnant, having my taste in food kind of change there for a second, I started to be drawn to those former fear foods. So now I have potato chips almost every single day. I think it might be like a craving or something because I looked it up and apparently potato chips do contain certain vitamins that are really good for you during pregnancy. So I'm sure there's a reason why I'm craving them. But then the other stuff I think is more like when you don't really want to look at certain foods because you have food aversions, the unhealthier options seem a lot more appealing because it's like, well, I don't want to eat right now, but if I'm gonna eat, of course I want to eat this thing that's super tasty and not super good for you. And in a way, I'm kind of grateful for that because now I can have ice cream and potato chips and butter and it's completely normal to me. And also my body image has been really good during this pregnancy. First of all, because I think pregnancy is super cute. Baby bumps are so cute. Your blood flow increases by 7 pounds. You get 7 pounds more of blood, so you have more of a glow, more of a youthful puffy skin. Your breasts change. I don't know, a lot of these changes I just kind of welcomed. I just felt like they were beautiful, and maybe it has to do with the fact that you're creating a human being, you're doing something that feels really magical, and that's really incredible of your body to do. As of right now, I haven't really gained much weight, and I think part of the reason for that is, firstly, the food aversions that I experienced in the first trimester, but secondly, I got put on a thyroid medication that apparently boosts your metabolism. You could experience a little bit of weight loss when you're on it. That's another a thing in and of itself. But yeah, it's kind of sad though when people say oh, you don't really look pregnant. I'm almost halfway there. I wish I did. I wish I was showing more. Maybe this will change as my body starts to change a little bit more, maybe towards the third trimester. But as of right now, all the changes that I've experienced have been very much welcomed by me. For me personally, some of the things that have helped me the most in terms of healing my relationship with food have been firstly eating slower and focusing more on the health value of foods. Because when I was in the throes of my eating disorder, I didn't care about the health necessarily. I just wanted the lowest calorie thing. And once my priorities and my values actually shifted from I want to be as skinny as possible to I want to live as long as possible because I love being alive, it made it a simple choice. And like I said, now during pregnancy, it's a little different. I have slightly different diet, maybe not quite as healthy, unfortunately, but that really helps you balance it out because it's okay, I could have this disgusting rice cracker that has 50 calories per serving, or I could have these tasty 200 calorie cashews that are super healthy and satiating. Once your values shift, it becomes such an easy choice. And then the slowing down for me was just being able to check in more with my hunger and satiety cues because sometimes people really override those signals by just going too fast, not giving themselves an opportunity to check in with their bodies. And so now I'm pretty much always at any table, the slowest eating person. I had an idea about the energy phenomenon you were describing. Humans often have some kind of tribal mindset, based in family, religion, including atheism or these purposes, locality, class, ideology, profession, association, found family, and each tribe has within it relations between the various members, both in terms of their social function and in their diplomatic stance with the rest of the group. This leads to pregnancy taking on a new meaning, that of a new member being added to the tribe, and the various members of the tribe having to recalibrate their relationships and work out how this new member is going to fit into the overall dynamics of the tribe. Hope this helps. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's not only the adding of a new member of the tribe, it's also your role as the pregnant person within the tribe also shifts. Like I was talking about how I'm experiencing kind of the shift from maiden archetype to mother archetype. It changes the way other people see me and interact with me. I can relate to your fears. I also had an eating disorder for quite a while, and while I thought I was recovered, I realized pregnancy was truly healing for me. I made it my top priority to feed my baby and my body. When I lost a pound during the very beginning, I was like, oh no, and that was my starting point. I now have a BMI of about 25, and while I would have hated it pre-baby so much I'd probably relapse, I'm fine with it now. I still breastfeed twice a day, he's a year old, and I plan on losing a bit of the weight, but just not while I'm still feeding my baby with my body. Also, I was so fearful of losing my baby as well. I dreamed of miscarriage twice, and even when he was born, I was afraid of SIDS or whatever could happen to him. But now it's fine, honestly. I'm a quite chill mom, meaning I let him explore lots and know that him hurting himself from time to time is a normal part of childhood or life, and that he will learn. He will learn what to avoid, and he will learn I'm always there to offer comfort. That's so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing. I love hearing your journey from more of an anxious parent to what sounds like a super healthy approach that helps children learn lessons while also staying safe. Like I was talking about earlier in the video, I completely agree that pregnancy really finalizes any last pushes that you needed towards recovery when it comes to eating disorders. And I think it's interesting that you also were worried about miscarriage and SIDS because there is so often this overlap between eating disorders and health-related anxieties that can feel very obsessive compulsive. I don't know if this is the case for you, but for me, I definitely know that I'm a very obsessive compulsive person and that my eating disorder was partially a product of that. And I'm already worried about making sure that the infant will be okay and, making sure that he's still breathing, all of this stuff, part of which I think is normal as a first-time parent, and then part of which I think I'm going to need to also work on to release control. Hi Anna, I believe I heard you say in previous videos that you struggle with health anxiety. I'm not sure at all, though I apologize if that's not the case. I might have gotten mixed up with another person on YouTube. Nope, that's me. But I was wondering if that's the case, how do you deal with it now that you're pregnant? Pregnancy is dangerous and brings so many health issues to most women. I was really anxious for about the first couple weeks. Particularly in the morning, I would wake up with my heart racing and feeling like I'm gonna do something wrong or I already have done something wrong to the baby. And since then, honestly, it's kind of become a non-issue. I don't know why. My mom pointed it out too. She's like, you seem to be doing really well with your illness anxiety despite the pregnancy. I think it's just kind of everything is scary in the very beginning when you first start off with something. And then once you get in the groove of things and once you realize nothing bad is happening, it's fine, then that anxiety kind of dissipates. I do get a little bit anxious before some of the prenatal appointments and before receiving blood work because it's always in the back of my mind, all the things that could go wrong. But it doesn't really take up a lot of my mental space and it doesn't take up a lot of my time. Also, I used to have white coat hypertension, and after going to so many prenatal appointments and getting so much blood drawn, a lot of my white coat hypertension and my fear of blood getting drawn has completely disappeared. So that's another benefit that through exposure and through positive associations at the doctor, a lot of that anxiety has dissipated. And I don't know why, maybe part of it is hormonal. My mom said that she had a super chill mood when she was pregnant too. Maybe it's that, but if you yourself is someone who struggles with illness anxiety, yes, pregnancy can be a huge trigger, or it could be like what I'm experiencing, something that helps you overcome it or sort of forces you to overcome it. I'm super nervous on planes. I'm a nervous flyer when things get turbulent. And now that I'm pregnant, when I happen to be on a plane, it's almost like a matter of I don't let myself get panicky anymore. And I know this sounds kind of strange because it's what are you saying? That having panic or anxiety is a choice? No, not entirely, but I think maybe partly. The sensations that come up are not a choice. But what we do with those sensations and whether we worsen them does kind of depend on us. So now when it starts to get a little bit turbulent on the plane, because I realize that having panic symptoms would not be good for the baby, it's almost like something has unlocked in my brain that's just no, you're fine. You're not going to have panic right now. It's that's not even an option because your top priority is to ensure the safety of this child. So we're not doing this, that kind of thing. I think those were most of the questions that I got on that video. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts to everything I've shared in this video. Thank you all so much for the support that you've shown when I announced my pregnancy and for all the congratulations. I'm super, super grateful, and I'll see you soon.